Hello, and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today, we are continuing our time in the Draconis Combine with a company-sized raiding unit, the 3rd Company of the Tarwater Battalion of the 5th Sword of Light, a semi-independent unit known as Sorenson's Sabres. As Sorenson's Sabres are part of the 5th Sword of Light, they share the same insignias of the Flaming Sword and the Gold Dragon. However, they have a very unique company symbol of a dark mushroom cloud on a gray shield with the Sword of Light emblem placed atop it. They originally used Karita Red as their primary paint color, like other members of the Sword of Light. When they became independent, custom paint schemes became more common. When they returned to the 5th Sword, they went back to their red paint style. Later, they would add gold highlights when they joined the Otomo in the 3060s. Their fighter uses crudely painted shark teeth on the front of the fuselage, and their Phoenix Hawk LAM uses a blue, gray, and white paint scheme. Sorenson's Sabres has a long history that is mostly told in 2 scenario books. If you want to avoid spoilers, then skip to the time listed. The origins of Sorenson's Sabres began with the 5th Sword of Light. During the late 3rd Succession War, the 5th was conducting garrison duty on several worlds. On the world of Morel, the 3rd Company of Tarwater's Battalion were on garrison duty. A food riot erupted in February 3021. Captain Abraham Silverine would get out of his dragon in order to convince the mob to calm down and disperse. Things went from bad to worse, and he tried to get back into his mech, but would get clubbed to death by the crowd before he made it. His remaining lancemates would open fire on the crowd, killing or wounding hundreds of rioters. Afterward, Taisho Palmer Conti would court-martial the 3 remaining members of the Command Lance. They were found guilty for dereliction of duty and would be executed for failing to protect their commander. This put Tai Daniel Sorenson in temporary command. He renamed the company from Silverine's Stallions to Sorenson's Sabres in April 3021, when he was made the full commander of the company. From this point, the unit would begin their transformation from line company to semi-independent company. It wasn't long after Sorenson took command that nearly all but one Aerofighter would be transferred to Galedawn 5 in order to deal with a potential Davian invasion. This would have a major impact on the formation of the Sabres. The company would integrate their single fighter and a Phoenix Hawk land-air mech into the company. They would train for 3 months in order to develop new tactics based on this formation. In July 3021, the Sabres would be sent out on several raids into Lyran territory. The company would use a hit hard and fast strategy. Oftentimes, they would circumvent defenders to hit civilian targets in order to weaken enemy morale. They also showed off their specialty of city fighting in many of these battles. The company's first target was Fatima, which gave them a chance to try their new strategies. Tai Sorenson was able to trick the local defenders, the 22nd Sky Rangers, into thinking that he was leading a full regiment. He did this with electronic countermeasures and smoke bombs to give the appearance of a larger force trying to move to the enemy base. This allowed his team to hit the city of Nueve Lisbon while the defenders prepared for a larger assault that never arrived. The team would continue their raids, hitting the worlds of Fort Lodon and Morningside with quick hit-and-run strikes. One of the rare moments of playing defense came on the world of LeBlanc, where their LAM was shot down, and the team moved in to rescue their comrade from the 12th Lyran Guards. This rush was so intense, it caused an enemy rout and the Sabres won without losses. The last raid would be on Pandora. There, the Sabres would be running low on supplies and in need of repairs. They were able to catch the Lyran garrison force by surprise and complete the mission. They would destroy food and munition stores with only limited casualties. After that, they returned to Combine space to repair and refit on the world of bad news. By August of 3022, the Sabres would be moved to Luthien to serve as a garrison force alongside the rest of their parent battalion. They would deal with a minor incident in February 3023. It wasn't until May 3023 when the battalion would get sent to New Caledonia. They arrived to discover that a battalion of pirates had been raiding the world and even besieged the city of Lidwick. Sorenson's Sabres would rush to the scene with a dropship assault. They would face off with a light mech raider team led by Bandit King, Corvin, Scourge, Scantoli. The use of the Phoenix Hawk Lamb and Arrow Fighter helped ease the speed disadvantage of the Sabres. After a short fight, the Sabres won, but the fight wasn't over, and the rest of Tarwater's battalion teamed up with the local defenders to end the siege. There would be 2 more raids by Scantoli's pirates, and the final raid would be in December 3023, where Scantoli would be killed and the pirates destroyed. In August 3024, the Sabres would have an encounter with the Waco Rangers on Alteus. The Rangers would attempt a raid and take heavy damage with little to show for their efforts. The Sabres would spend most of 3024 garrisoning Gaeldon 5 alongside the rest of their parent battalion. By the end of the year, they were stationed on New Samarkand. They worked as guards and escort for the Sun Zhang Mech Warrior Academy after several key officials were threatened. The Sabres hated this assignment, and Sorenson took efforts to get a new assignment. He would succeed in August 3025. It was becoming obvious that the Federated Suns were planning something. The Sabres would be sent out as recon and to disrupt the Davian border forces. They would work with the 5th Sword of Light as they raided the Federated Suns. This included raids on Ozawa, Quinn, Town, Glenmora, Quinton, Udibi, and Erai. They did a raid on Udibi in August of 3025, where they would run into the 3rd Seti Hussars. This was a distraction mission for the Galter III campaign, and the Sabres were expected to fail. They stole from a supply depot, but would not get the support they were promised, and would get surrounded by Davian forces. Sorenson would order the group to run with what they could take. They would escape with minimal losses. Takashi Kurita would blame the lack of support on a communications error, and would punish 2 innocent operators as a cover for using Sorenson's Sabres as disposable pawns. The Sabres would raid Conroe in November. They would get ambushed by resistance forces led by a Devastator tank. The retreat would lead to the cancellation of the campaign, and the Sabres would get transferred to a different mission. In December 3025, the team would be on Cimarron. The Sabres would work with the 5th as they faced off with the Avalon Hussars. They would learn that General Arthur Hamburg was wounded and being transported via a train. 1 raid later, the general was dead. Their next raid was on Town in January 3026. This was a mission to draw Davian forces away from the retreating Kurita forces after the failure of the Galtor campaign. The difficulties came as an enemy Long Tom started to rain death down upon the troops. The Sabres moved in to take out the enemy artillery emplacement. By the end of the fight, the 5th Sword of Light would have a new Long Tom cannon. Then, the Sabres would go to Quinn, along with the 36th Dairon regulars, known as the Hungry Ghosts. The Sabres would be disgusted at the slaughter of innocents that the 36th would partake in. The Sabres would also be blamed for this by Swan's Cavaliers. The Sabres would hold the line against the mercenaries as the 36th completed their mission. The Sabres would then be moved to their next operation, where they would assist in the Battle of Quinton. They would raid a Davian base, but they would have to pull back due to the heat of the world causing problems for their mechs. Reunited with the 5th Sword of Light, the Sabres would be part of the invasion of Ozawa in April 3026. The 5th Sword had easily defeated the Ozawa Urban Defense Brigade. However, the 3rd Crucis Lancers would arrive a short time later to counterattack. The 5th were pushed from the city they had taken not long before. The Sabres performed a fighting withdrawal as the rest of the 5th escaped. Then they left, having given the Lancers a hard fight to take Ozawa back. The 5th Sword of Light and the 3rd Crucis Lancers would get a rematch on Markob in July. The 5th had taken back the world from the Federated Suns, who had captured it in 3024. The Lancers came in as a counterattack, but Sorenson Sabres led the charge and helped their parent regiment defeat the Lancers with a long and tough fight. Later in the year, the team would face off with Davian troops on the world of Erai. A dropship crash would leave part of the team stranded, and they would have to fight their way past infantry and various ambushes to reunite with the rest of the unit. By September 3026, Sorenson Sabres would find themselves on Kawabe. They would be working alongside the Black Widow Company. They had arrived to take out a group of rebels who had overthrown the Kurita government. Their mission would be tough due to the tenacity of the rebels. They would win, but Daniel Sorenson wasn't happy about fighting angry, armed civilians. At the dawn of the Fourth Succession War, the Sabres were stationed on the Lyran border alongside parts of the Fifth Sword of Light. In 3029, the 5th would be shifted to Northwind in an attempt to try to cut off routes between the Lyran Commonwealth and Federated Suns. Sorenson Sabres would be given a special assignment and would get a new coat of paint on their mechs, with orders to traverse the waterways of the city of Kormati as part of a recon operation. The team was not told that Taisho Conti and the ISF had put a virus into the paint that would spread through the water of the city. The attack would cause thousands of deaths, including severe damage to the 5th Deneb Light Cavalry. While the Davian forces would nearly lose, the arrival of the Northwind Highlanders would turn the tide and force the Kurita troops to evacuate the world. After the retreat from Northwind, the 5th took time to recover while the next stage of the war was being planned. When Taisho Conti decided to hunt the Kellhounds on Nusakon, the Sabres came along for the attack. The Sabres acted as a flanking unit, while the main force went head-to-head with the Hounds. The 5th Sword was devastated after the battle, and when Palmer Conti lost his duel, it would spell the end of the 5th's attempt to defeat the Kellhounds. After the war, Sorenson Sabres would be in decent condition, and would be put to use raiding the Davian border over the course of several years. However, in 3034, the formation of the Free Rasselhag Republic caused a rift in the Sabres. Daniel Sorenson and a few others were of Rasselhag descent. This caused divided loyalties, but Sorenson decided to remain with the Combine to honor his father and uncle, both of whom had been regional warlords. Disagreements among the troops led to a brawl on Togura, where Daniel Sorenson would get punched, causing him to have Izora Soderstrom and Cedric Svensson arrested for their behavior. However, they were freed by unknown parties and fled with other Rasselhag-born members of the unit in hopes of returning to their homeland. Tai Sorenson would give chase with the remainder of the unit. They would catch up with the rebels and ask them to reconsider or at least properly resign. The rebels refused and fired on their former allies. Things would get out of hand, and several soldiers on both sides would die. Soderstrom and Svensson would be shot down, but Eleanor Rubach would smash the cockpit of Vernon Monroe's Wasp after he destroyed Svensson's longbow with an ammo explosion. This caused Sorenson to turn on Rubach, leaving 4 of the Sabres dead by the end of the rebellion. Sorenson Sabres would return to their base after being reduced to 2 lances. They would get orders to transfer to Damien in order to assist the Kungsarmee, the military of the Free Rasselhag Republic. In addition to that, Conrad Theodore Kurita would allow any soldiers who were of Rasselhag descent to leave the DCMS without issue. This message would destroy morale, as it meant the bloodshed between teammates had been completely pointless. They would arrive on Damien in February of 3035. They did not receive replacement soldiers or equipment until after they had reached the world, giving them no time to train their new recruits. The planet would get raided by pirates led by Bandit King Heinrich Grimm. The battle did not go well for the Sabres, as they had lost their rare Phoenix Hawk Lamb and its pilot. The pirates would escape with 3 dropships worth of cargo. In June, they discovered that a traitor was responsible for the various raids. Sorenson broke orders to eliminate the traitor and avenge the local militia. Though the traitor was killed, the pirates would get away. The ISF was not happy, which would lead to the Sabres getting into deep trouble. They would get called back to Gaeldon 5, where they would be removed from the 5th Sword of Light. The weak remains of the unit would then be sent to garrison the periphery border. They would be stationed on Enif as a defense for the local industry. They would eventually be sent academy washouts and low-skill support staff to fill up their roster. Tyee Sorenson would use this time to begin rebuilding his unit. He took the raw recruits and replacement equipment and would set up mock battles to sharpen his troops. This helped rebuild the skill and confidence of the unit. In 3042, the team would get their first chance to show off their new skills. A pirate raid was easily thwarted and took the Pirate Union-class dropship as well as a few pirates captive. Then, 3 months later, another pirate raid came at the worst time. 2 lances were having a mock battle with training ammunition, so the fire lance had to hold off the pirates long enough for weapons to be reloaded and reconfigured. The fire lance struggled against the pirates, but the team moved in and destroyed the pirates' assault mechs. Not long after that, the pirates fled the world. One of the surviving pirates was Florence Tapis, the consort of Mad Max Smythe, the leader of a group of pirates called Smythe's Slavers. They would learn that Smythe's Slavers were part of the Band of the Damned. ISF agents arrived in July to continue the interrogation, and Sorenson Sabres were given a new mission: hunt down and destroy the Band of the Damned. Over the course of a year, they went to several periphery worlds, but could not track down the main base of the Band of the Damned. Their biggest achievement was taking down a slaver ship and its escorts near Land's End. After their mission ended, they were reassigned to Tabayama and were reunited with their parent unit, the 5th Sword of Light. This was a major upturn for the unit, as it meant they had redeemed their lost honor. By 3047, raids from the Federated Commonwealth would start getting more frequent. Sorenson Sabres would be sent to the FedCom border and be stationed on Capra. By May 3048, they would begin strikes into the Draconis March region of the Federated Commonwealth. In August, they would reach Udabi and face off with Fushida's Fusiliers. The Sabres' attack caused the Fusiliers to retreat into their base. Before leaving, the Sabres took a couple captives to find out if they knew anything about a potential FedCom invasion. The interrogations led to no information. They would continue to do raids for 3 months with no major intelligence gained. In November, they would return to Capra and get repairs and resupply. They would face off with a group of skilled raiders who were part of the Band of the Damned. This information would lead the local warlord to send the 7th Pesht regulars to hunt for the band, while the Sabres continued their mission of searching the Davian border for potential threats. They would conduct a deep raid on Brundage in February 3049. The mission was to be a distraction while a spy could be recovered. The Sabres would find themselves confronting the 3rd Lyran regulars. The fighting was rough, but they completed the mission and were able to escape with the spy. The intelligence provided by the spy revealed that raids had been conducted by the Fox's Teeth, also known as McKinnon's Company, of the 7th Crucis Lancers. Tyee Sorenson decided to take the fight to the FedCom raiders. They arrived on Bennett 3 in June and would get their showdown with the Fox's Teeth. Both sides took heavy damage and earned respect for their enemy. Eventually, Sorenson called for a withdrawal. After completing a fighting withdrawal, the DCMS High Command used the gathered intelligence to conclude that there was no plan for a major FedCom offensive. For their service to the Draconis Combine, Sorenson Sabres were made a fully independent unit by Conray Theodore Carita. They became a Black Ops unit designed to test experimental equipment. Due to their status as a test unit, they did not fight on the front lines during the clan invasion. Instead, they were working with R&D to test out some of the Combine's newest technology. This included prototype Omnimex and C3 equipment. In 3061, Tyee Daniel Sorenson would retire from the unit to spend more time with his wife and kids. Albert Benton would take command, and in his first speech to the unit, he would say that the team would not change their name, as was the tradition in the Sword of Light. This was done to honor the man who had pushed them to become the specialized unit they had become. After the changing of leadership, the Sabres would get moved to the Ghost Bear Dominion border. In 3062, Sorenson Sabres would get involved with the First Combine Dominion War. This would be the first combat they would face since 3049. They took independent action and raided the Dominion border. They would earn the respect of the clanners and would be invited to witness the trial of possession for Courchevel, which would end the war. During this trial, Tai Benton would take out a kingfisher in a duel. After the war, Sorensen's Sabres would get called to Luthien. They were then integrated into the Otomo and functioned as bodyguards for Theodore Kurita. In 3068, the Black Dragon Society would influence the Second Sword of Light to capture the capital of Luthien. The Sabres were able to get through the battle without taking heavy damage, unlike other members of the Otomo. During the Battle of Luthien, they would once again function as an independent company, and would assist the 1st Genyosha by performing flanking maneuvers against their enemies. They would be sent to Arcturus in 3073 to work as guards for Chandrasekhar Kurita. This was a plan to create a coalition of forces to fight against the Ward of Blake. On May 11th, the Ward of Blake attacked. There were heavy losses on both sides. Even though the Blake forces seemed to have an advantage, they withdrew from the world. The Sabres would be damaged, but survive the battle and continue to work with the coalition forces. After the death of Chandrasekhar Kurita in 3073, the Sabres would work with Stone's coalition. They would function as liaisons to Clan Ghost Bear due to the status they had earned during the Combine Dominion War. The remaining Sabres would work with Clan Ghost Bear, battling Blake forces in the Protectorate. They would also join in on the liberation of Terra in August 3078. They were made part of Task Force Mallet with the goal of liberating Athens. The Sabres worked with the Battle Corps mercenaries. They were successful. The story of Sorensen's Sabres ends at this point. It's unclear if they were destroyed in the later part of the Battle of Terra or if they had survived. Then it is possible that the remaining members would have either joined the Republic, joined Clan Ghost Bear, or returned to the Otomo. Sorensen's Sabres is an odd unit. They are the size of a small mercenary force, but are part of a house military. They also have a history of victory and defeat, dishonor and glory. They do more than many line units, and then they just fade away. While they mostly pulled raids, they still had a big impact on the history of the Draconis Combine. There are plenty of pilots who served with the Sabres. Here are some of the most notable. Daniel Sorenson, the son of a Rasselhag warlord who would die in 3007. This would drive Daniel to be the best and join the 5th Sword of Light. He would get promoted after his commander died in a food riot. He then led the team through both good and bad times before retiring to spend time with his family. He piloted a Marauder, then a Thug in 3036, and finally a Hatamoto Chi in 3049. Albert Benton. He began as an artillery loader, but after downing a Stinger, he would end up stealing it from a Davian recovery team and keeping it for himself. He would become the 2nd commander in 3061. He took down a Kingfisher with his Blackhawk in a duel during the Combine Dominion War. He originally piloted a Stinger called Lucky Star that was destroyed on Northwind, then a Panther, which was traded for a Mongoose in the mid-3030s, and finally a Blackhawk prior to the Combine Dominion War. Eldon the Shark Berardinelli, the aerospace pilot of the original team, a man with a large ego and a cutting tongue, a very skilled pilot and the team medic. But his abrasive personality kept him from being a leader. He had a scar from when he insulted a mech warrior in his youth, and lost a sword duel with that mech warrior because he didn't know how to actually fight with a sword. He pilots a samurai. Izora Izzy Soderstrom, a member of the original Command Lance, aggressive in a fight, but otherwise very calm. A bit of an intellectual who enjoyed reading and can pilot a jump ship. He was one of the Rasselhagian pilots who rebelled and would die in that fight. He piloted a Phoenix Hawk. Cedric Svensson, an original member of the team that would turn against his allies when he went AWOL to join the Free Rasselhag Republic. He would die during his rebellion. He piloted a longbow. Eleanor Rubach, an orphan who escaped a cruel master and was adopted by a wealthy family. She learned to pilot mechs from her new family and would later start training for jump ship navigation. She was a bit rough around the edges, but was respected by her team. She would be killed after turning on her unit in the rebellion at Tagura. She piloted a modified HER 4K Hermes 3. Sharon Burgos. She was a short-tempered warrior who killed another soldier over an insult. She was also an ISF informant and had interrogation abilities that helped the team gain intel. She lost her warrior spirit when her on and off lover, Izora Soderstrom, was killed by her during the rebellion in 3034. She would sacrifice herself to help the team escape during a fight with the Fox's Teeth in 3049. She piloted a trebuchet destroyed on Nusicon. Then she got a trebuchet 7K, which was destroyed in 34 and replaced with another 7K. Clay Moretti, a young and good-hearted pretty boy who makes sure his uniform and mech are spotless. He can be a bit reckless, but his skill kept him alive. He does his own maintenance and believes he will save the galaxy, but sadly, he would die in 3035. He pilots a Phoenix Hawk Lamb. Shakir Girard, a member of the 1st Proserpina Hussars. His disagreements with the Hussar leadership ended up getting him moved to the Legion of Vega. His loyalty and skill got him to be recruited by the ISF. He would be a part of the Sabres in the 3040s. He would leave the Sabres and work closer with the ISF, eventually raising to the rank of Director of the ISF. He was a key part in the war against the Black Dragon Society. He piloted a modified 4G Hunchback. Jasmine Rubach, the secret daughter of Eleanor Rubach and Cedric Svensson. She was kept with her grandparents and did not know the fate of her parents until she had turned 18 in the late 40s. She requested to join the Sabres and was approved once her mech warrior training was completed. She would pilot her mother's Hermes 3. Yvette Sorenson, the daughter of Daniel Sorenson, a skilled pilot who served with the First Sword of Light. Her mother was killed by the Word of Blake, and she joined the Sabres to seek revenge in 3070. She pilots a Venom. Sorensen's Sabres is an odd unit, not just because of the Arrow Fighter and Phoenix Hawk Lamb that are part of their main forces, but also the fact that their entire unit through the 3060s has been listed in 2 campaign books, giving a player very little that they can do to change the group around, unless you want to just make it your own version of the story. Thus, it is very easy to make the full company as long as you have these books. They had a unique composition, with 10 standard mechs, 1 Phoenix Hawk Lamb, and a Samurai Arrow Fighter. Later, the Sabres lineup would adjust to reflect their changing role in the DCMS. They used their aerial units as scouts and harassers as the slower mechs moved in for the kill. The Sabres specialized in urban combat and deceptive tactics. They had a command lance, fire lance, and pursuit lance. They had a tendency to use hit-and-run maneuvers, and many raids struck non-military targets or storehouses. Occasionally, they would hit civilian areas in order to degrade enemy morale. It does seem that they may have had some infantry or engineering corps support, but it does not come up too often in the text. Overall, they're a simple unit to put together for very efficient raids. There is one short story I could find featuring Sorensen's Sabres. I enjoyed it, but it is very short. There isn't much else about Sorensen's Sabres, as most of their information is held within 2 scenario books, which cover the vast majority of their history. Beyond that, they show up in a couple other source books and campaign books. I came across Sorensen's Sabres a while ago, but I just assumed they were a mercenary unit. When I finally looked into the unit, I was surprised at the depth of their history. As I said in the previous video, they were the reason why I went with the 5th Sword of Light as the first regiment of that command I would explore. Also, as one of the oldest campaign books, they have importance to the whole of the BattleTech franchise. Thus, I'm glad I covered this unit, and I'm looking forward to covering more of the original sourcebook units in the future. Sorensen's Sabres is an oddball when it comes to painting. While they do have an era of unique paint schemes, it is just as easy to use standard Karita Red Sword of Light designs in order to fill their roster when playing a scenario. If I do a mission from the campaigns, I'll use my Sword of Lights, but if you have done the bespoke paint designs, let me know in the comments. Next time, I'll be covering a Lyran Commonwealth unit, the 25th Arcturan Guards. They tie into the holiday season in a very unexpected way. After that, it will be Snord's Irregulars, the video that many people in my comments have been eagerly awaiting. A big thank you to all my subscribers. My channel keeps growing, and that keeps motivating me to make more content. May your weapons stay hot, and your reactors stay cool. Until next time, check out more BattleTech faction briefings, and I'll see you at the tavern.